Welcome back to the show, the podcast where we unpack the real stories behind founders, operators, and leaders building in the tech space. Today's episode is brought to you by Digital, helping founders build predictable sales engines. If you'd like a free consult, comment engine and someone will reach out to you. Now, in today's episode, we're joined by Joe Rogers, CEO of Work Done Incorporated. Joe has been operating in the AI space long before it became mainstream, which gives him a unique perspective on what's signaled, what's noise, and what actually creates durable value. Joe, welcome to the SaaS Playbook.
Great to be here, Jenny.
Now, Joe, you've been in the AI space long before it really became a bit of a buzzword and a buzz industry. What originally pulled you into it, and what did you see early on that others might have missed?
Wow, great question. I was computer science in college in the before times, and I was lucky enough to sort of come out straight out of school, start consulting independently to customers of a certain type of technology called at the time enterprise content management and business process management. I knew the technical sides of that. The rest I learned along the way. And I did that for a good 20 years plus all over the US, quite a bit in Southeast Asia and quite a bit in the Middle East. And I actually started Work Done long ago because I was in the automation space. I had an idea as to how we could automate repetitive tasks in the back office. That's how it started. And pretty quickly, it evolved into this concept of watching complex transactions from the beginning, how they get processed, and then capturing the outcome after the fact and using that to determine the best practice. So that was using a lot of like supervised machine learning and natural language processing. And that was long before generative AI. And the way we did it was it really kind of took traditional consulting and stood it on its head. Instead of coming in and looking over the shoulder with a clipboard and asking questions, we can actually observe processes without setting foot on site at a much more granular level than traditional consulting methodologies.
I think when it comes down to the conversation of automations, I mean, there's plenty of tools out there that sort of does it automatically now. Did you sort of foresee that progressing at such a speed where you can almost prompt it to sort of workflows for you now, and all you have to do is connect the relevant tools?
Sure. So you're right. There's been a lot of automation for a while, even before Gen AI with no code and low code. And, you don't have to be IT or a programmer. You can do it yourself. Just drag and drop. That's always been a thing. The difference between, and even so more so now with generative AI and agentic automation, the key difference with what we're doing compared to I've actually today, this is quite the coincidence. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal about sort of how companies will capture expertise from people using AI, and then the companies will learn how to do it. That's the closest I've seen anyone come to a description of Work Done. So we have been way ahead for a long time, to the point where I actually shut the company down for between 2.5 years, because I realized we were early. The market wasn't ready. I would describe it to people and they would get this far away look in their eyes and start drooling out of the corner of their mouth. And it's like, okay, I've seen this look before. So, our patent came through, ChatGPT came out. Then it was like, okay, this is clearly it. So it was generative at that time, long before agentic. And what we're doing, which I still to this day have not seen a competitor who does it the way we do it. We're learning in the background, no stress, no friction, no training necessary. People just do their work. And this isn't for individuals. This is for medium to large size companies. So our base is 20 seats and up, and we can go into the thousands. So it's really industrial strength. And we come in and capture this, and then we get this sort of intelligence layer for that company based on observed best practices. And originally it was intended to support humans, so everybody knew the best way to do it. Now it supports humans and agents. It's this sort of ground truth that allows humans and agents to collaborate, working from the same playbook, from the same reality, because we are the space in between the systems, the company's systems of records. It could be your ERP, it could be your CRM, it could be your Workday. we're not doing any of those things. We're actually observing the human using all of these things in addition to Outlook, in addition to Excel. And that's what we're capturing the operational best practices or work heuristics as we refer to them.
An important note there is understanding that work done is actually more about the actions of the humans and not the tools itself, where a lot of automation tools in this day and age is focused on the tools themselves and their behaviors. So I really like that work done is focused on the humans that actually make the business. That's really awesome. And as the conversation gets so much further away from the humans, it's really important to actually bring that back a little bit.
And this drives my biz dev guy crazy, but I love describing work done without using the letters AI because we're very much solving like real business problems in a way that doesn't necessarily require talking about how the technology works. It just works in the background on the learning side, and then on the automation deployment side with the human in the middle interface. And that part we actually talk about and show. But what you just said was like everybody else is focused on AI, some aspect of AI. We have a ton of AI. It's not about the AI. It's about the business process. It's about the problem. It's about the solution. So, and about making it easy. I mean, everybody kind of goes into this thinking this is great, and then they push it out and nobody adopts it. Nobody uses the co-pilot to answer questions. So, and that is an issue. And adoption starts even before the project begins. That's when you start with adoption. You just don't push it out there and expect people to change their ways. We're human. We hate change.
And I think because it operates in the background, it feels it's less invasive, right? So it's more likely to create less friction, therefore higher adoption rates from where I'm standing and my understanding at least, especially with your target ICP, you're targeting sort of enterprise level, essentially at 20 seats minimum. So it has to make sense for them to adopt where it's not going to create an additional workflow or it's not going to be frictional. So I think that point in itself is super unique. Because when I look at tools, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to have to now update all the SOPs. Is it really worth it? There's no guarantee that it will work. Whereas if you can adopt something that operates completely in the background, but gives you the insights and therefore create the automations, obviously from an operations perspective, I think that is really going to be the key point of difference when it comes to adopting work done. And I'm just speaking from what I'm understanding of it thus far.
Yeah, no, you've nailed it. It's really there's a few guiding ethoses to our software, philosophically speaking, and one is like no friction on the learning side, and then 100% adoption because it runs in the background on the execution automation side. Again, and if there's an exception, then it shows up in their email with a link and it brings them into our interface. And so, and that's even that is like there's no training required really. It's super simple. And then we learn from that. So then that exception goes away in the future because we've learned how to do it by observing you do it. So then we know we're observing the process before deployment, and then we're observing the process after the efficiency rolls out. And it's like, oh, we just saved you $500,000 this year, and there's another deployment coming next month. So it's very agile in that respect. Once they start realizing how this works, and it's not just some other software suite that they have to learn how to use, another place that they have to live that wants to own their whole world, they start to ask questions like, wait a second, can work done do this? Can work done do that? And that's really gratifying for me because then it's clear they're getting value.
Yeah, it's constantly learning, essentially. But the humans are also constantly learning. Now, just going back, you've seen multiple cycles of hype and correction in tech because of your tenure. How do you personally filter signal from noise when evaluating new opportunities?
Another good question. Yeah, so it's having, been doing tech as long as I have since the 80s. Uh, there's I think the technical term is hype cycle. You've probably heard of the hype cycle. Something new comes along, and it's Gartner, the Gartner hype cycle. People get super excited. There's irrational exuberance. It comes up here, and then everybody thinks it's like the best things ever. And then boom, it drops down once they realize that it's not ready yet, or it's not ready for prime time, or not fully baked. But then it comes back down, and then it's a slow build over a long time. And that hype cycle it happens every single time, whether it's the dot-com implosion in the early 2000s, or, social media, like, whatever happened to MySpace, like, there was all and then mobile, like BlackBerry was riding high, and everybody made fun of the iPhone. We know how that worked out. So there's always why your question is interesting is because typically a lot of senior IT people will wait for that cycle to go, the hype and then the crash, and then they'll come in once all the yahoos are out of the way. I consider myself a Yahoo, just for the record. However, AI is different because those other technologies were, they followed a same sort of curve and trend, and then it would, build up. There's a with AI, and this just happened recently in the last couple of months. I don't know how closely you're watching, like the new models, X and Claude, Opus, but like 4.5 Opus came out just a couple months ago. 4.6 came out like last week. And I use my personal workflow. I use all the LLMs. I take the output of one and feed it to other. It's like multi-agent. And Claude is kind of my quality control for other things. And it usually, you know, it's a beast. It pulls no punches. And I noticed the difference between 4.5 and 4.6 Opus, and it was massive, and it was only 2 months out since the last release. So AI is now building the new AI. It's getting better, faster, and the releases are getting closer together, more frequent. And if you take the old perspective of waiting for the bleeding edge to get to the leading edge because you don't want to burn your fingers, it's very easy that you might get left behind. So everybody that I talk to, I say, try to integrate AI beyond just asking a chat bot question, like try to incorporate it into your daily workflow now, because it'll begin our own individual personal AI transformation. We do it for companies. We're all going through it individually. Everybody's going through it, whether they like it or not. They are in the midst of AI transformation. Just like during COVID, like it or not, you were doing digital transformation. Paper went away. You didn't have a choice. And if you're using your mobile phone, guess what? You're in the midst of it, personal AI transformation. So it's yeah, the old philosophy, the old sort of standby, which I used to do too. I would hear something new, I'd watch it, I'd read about it in the paper, on the web, Google News or whatever, and the trades, but I wouldn't jump out and do it because I knew that there was rough seas ahead, and I just figured I'll wait till all that's done and then I'll check it out. In this case, I just installed OpenClaw on a spare Mac over the weekend, because everything I read, I'm like, oh man, I need to jump on this now because this is like ground shaking. I mean, yeah, everybody talks about security and stuff, but what it enables you to do is quite significant, and it requires a mental shift in how we think just in order to like figure out how to use it right.
You've hit it on the head, right? It reminds me of Apple update software, like the iOS updates. And the first version, the first iteration of any Apple product, people tend to not actually go full force. And it's like, look, there's going to be better versions of it. And I think what AI has done, because it's so far in advance in terms of a machine learning, it's closed that gap right to almost to this point from this point. Therefore, people aren't really waiting anymore. So I feel like there's two ends of the spectrum. They're either waiting and they're probably going to get left behind, to be honest, or they adopt. They're early adopters. So there's no one in between. I always find it's one or the other. So it's really interesting to understand that landscape and what that really looks like for 26 and beyond. I feel like 26 is going to be a massive year for AI and what it can actually do, because the last thing I saw on LinkedIn, funnily enough, was an AI system creating a forum for other AI bots to go and complain about humans. I'm sure you've seen it,
Yeah,
but
it's called Moltbook, like Facebook for agents. Moltbook, yeah.
I think it's getting to a point where it's a little scary, where we're getting to that point where it's so intelligent and it's constantly learning. Where do we stop, right? So there's that. But for those who are not familiar, how would you describe what Work Done actually does? And more importantly, the problem that it solves at a enterprise level?
At the very top level, that we solve the age-old problem of knowledge walking out the door when a tenured person leaves. And that doesn't matter what industry you're in. Like we've all had that experience. Like we have a job. Oh, you have a question, go talk to Fred. Fred knows everything. He's been here 30 years. And Fred is like, and he loves it. He often like knows why decisions were made 10 years ago. Somebody slipped on a banana. So they put a sign there and a rug down and they stopped selling bananas. And that's why we do it. Whether or not it's true, that's what happened. And that sort of institutional memory gets lost because oftentimes there's like really good reasons for things being the way they are, but older people leave and then younger people or newer people come in and they don't know why. So then they end up trying the way that didn't work before. And it's just they're rebuilding the wheel instead of standing on their shoulders. Now that happens a lot. And that's very expensive. And the flip side of that is you actually don't necessarily want to be inhibited by what was true 10 years ago because it might not be true now. So then it's worth trying. And either way, it's like with a corporate memory, it watches every day. It becomes just like this family jewel, this corporate asset that gets more valuable with every passing day that it observes in the background. And then it not only tracks the best practices, but also the worst practices. So on the roadmap is where it can actually observe the screen while people are doing stuff. And if you're about to do something the wrong way, it can actually say, hey, hang on a second, Jenny. That's, you don't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? It can help you. It'll be a coach. There's a lot of ways we can take it. But right now it solves the problem of over the years, hard-earned like know-how walking out the door. Now, once we have that and we share it through a co-pilot so that a new person can come in and say, oh, I don't know how to manage, how do I process this insurance claim from Acme Insurance? They go ask the question, boom, they get the current SOP best practices as of yesterday because we're observing. It's not sitting on a shelf gathering dust. It's current. And so we're disseminating those best practices on demand. So it's kind of on demand training. And then the last thing we're doing, Minnie, is sort of this continuous optimization because we can then start deploying these agents in the background. And we just see people's workload start to come down and their free time increases. And then we can make suggestions because we know what they're good at. Let's like, hey, let's repurpose this person over here. Let's repurpose this person over here based on, the direction the company wants to go in. So.
Yeah, I like that it actually gives recommendations because my follow-up question to that point was, okay, now we're saving the business and the employees so much time. What are they now doing with that time? So I really like that. It's actually quite well thought out and elaborate because obviously they're suggestions, right? They're not necessarily going to follow their suggestions, but if it's one less layer that the leaders within the company has to think about, even better because in return, the leaders then save time. So that's very valuable from a outside objective, but more so going into, I guess, future for work done and sort of where work done is currently at the moment. If you had to identify one friction point most companies at least face when implementing AI or automation, what is it really? Is it more technology, mindset, or execution?
To be honest, the technology is, well, for myself, the technology is not hard. Maybe for other people, you got to learn new stuff. Anything new takes some work, but the technology is not that hard. Change management, organizational change management. You have people that are used to, if they have a question, they're used to like standing up and hitting a person over the wall. Hey, how do I do this? And the person's like deep in thought and they get interrupted like, oh yeah, no, you got to do this, this, this. And studies show it takes like people 10, 15 minutes to get back to where they were if they're deep in thought. So these disruptions are very expensive, especially if, you're like an engineer designing something. To get somebody to stop picking up the phone or stop interrupting their neighbor and instead go to this co-pilot and create a well-formed question to get the answer that they're looking for, that change of behavior, that's where a lot of adoption falls down. People don't want to do it. They're like, why do I have to do this differently? Some people, it doesn't matter what it is, it's a bell curve, right? And you have the people, the leading edge here, the people that like that stuff. Then you have the early adopters here. Then you have the late adopters here. And then you have the laggards down here. It doesn't matter where you go. That's just how it is. And so you have to figure out how to speak to each of those demographics. The early people, you don't have to tell them. They're already doing it. The early adopters, they're kind of waiting for everybody else to start because they don't want to burn their fingers, but they don't want to be seen as late. So that's a whole, those are the people that stood in line for their iPhones back in the day. But then there's the late adopters because they're like realizing they look around all of a sudden and realize everybody else is doing it. So they better get on board. They don't want to be made fun of, you know. And then there's the laggards who are like, I'm never going to use it. I don't like AI, you know. So that human nature based on top of um fear of AI. Like, everybody reads the news, watches the news. It's like the tech industry lost 250,000 jobs in 2025, roughly. And that is because the AI frontier models were like focused on their first thing out the gate was how to code. And they taught the models how to code. And now, and that's why Opus 4.5 was like only 2 months before 4.6, because it was like AI generated and AI improved. But that's in tech. All those people lost their jobs. How many other industries are next? It's already happened in tech and it's going to continue in tech. And now it's going to move industry to industry. So people that lean into it now instead of waiting for the dust to settle will be okay. The people who wait for it all, I just had a call. The guy said he's going to wait to see. It's $1 billion company. And they're a software company. I'm like, are you sure you want to wait on this one? Because I think it's going to be different this time. And you can already see it, but it's habit, right?
Sink or swim, Joe, sink or swim. And it'll be interesting to see what that looks like even in the next 24 months. Looking ahead though, Joe, speaking of 24 months, what does success really look like for work done? And what are your biggest levers that you're currently focused on and pulling to get work done there?
Yeah, sure. We're a success for us. We're a platform that I usually don't talk about it much, but we have something we call a work heuristic engine, which can be pointed at different sort of situations. So, and each use case has its own heuristics. So we're very much focused on customer acquisition now, and then we're starting to do licensing deals into verticals, whether it's mobility heuristics or sales order heuristics, claim processing heuristics. Like literally, we observe, and then here you go. Here are your bespoke. You're a different insurer than that insurer over there. This is how you do your stuff, and it's like licensing it to them so that they can use it as is. I see that as a huge opportunity, and it's really we're about to list on, our corporate memory is already listed on Azure and AWS marketplaces. We're about to list our AI transformation assessment, which is really the first step for everybody. And in 6 weeks, customers can find out exactly where they are. Again, it's behind the scenes. No muss, no fuss, no disruption. We present after 6 weeks a report with a presentation as to the insights that we've uncovered, the inefficiencies we found, opportunities for improvement, the roadmap as to where AI should be implemented first, whether it's a copilot, whether it's agentic automation, and the expected ROIs from that. Any company in 6 weeks can be way smarter. And then it's not, oh, let's throw out ChatGPT and see how it goes. This is like a fully holistic sort of 360-degree, like you're well informed. Before you commit any serious budget to AI, you go in armed with the reality of how your back office does its thing.
I really like that approach. Essentially, we're so confident in what we do. Let's try it out for 6 weeks and we'll give you a direct report as to where your inefficiencies are. I think with the landscape of it being a bit of a feature factory out there, it's hard to understand where exactly do we adopt. With a detailed report, they will know exactly where to adopt and how and why. So I think even just that 6-week sprint and sort of validation period will be super helpful, whether they onboard to work done or not.
Exactly. And so the alternative traditionally is go hire, Accenture or Deloitte or PwC or some mid-tier consultancy, and you're going to be 6 weeks minimum, 7 figures minimum, to get a similar report, yet it's like, sort of generated using the old methodology. So we can deliver a more detailed report at 1/10 the price in, a quarter of the time.
I think that alone is very valuable, and it's providing value before you even start to talk about commercials. So I really like that approach. That concludes the podcast for today, Joe. But thank you again for taking the time and sharing such grounded perspective on what it actually takes to build AI beyond the hype. But if you're building automation or exploring AI inside your organization, make sure to connect with Joe and check out Work Done Incorporated. We'll leave the links below the show notes so you can reach out to him directly. But keep building meaningfully. Joe, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jenny. It was a pleasure.